No, actually, let me pause 1 second. Okay, so our chapter is using technology to manage information. We will learn about how information technology helps managers make better decisions. We'll learn what computer networks are. We'll look at what systems are. We've talked about systems in the past, so we'll go into a little more detail on that. God bless you. And including the management information system. That's what managers use to make decisions. We will learn how to manage technology, how to make sure that your hardware and your software are working, are safe, they're not getting hacked, or you're not losing data. How do you do that? And we'll look at trends related to information technology. Now, trends are how things are changing over time, right? Information technology is probably one of the fastest changing areas. It's amazing how quickly things are developing, right? Like even AI, a couple of years ago, AI was not very advanced. Now it's all over the place and it's very effective. And sometimes we don't even know that it's there. When you are on Netflix, for example, and it's recommending certain movies for you based on your viewing habits, it's AI that's doing that. And that's been doing it for years. When you're typing on, let's say, a Microsoft Word document or on your phone and it's guessing what the next word is going to be, that's AI. And it's getting better and better. And now sometimes if you watch a video of somebody saying something, you might think that person said that thing and somebody recorded it. And that's how the video was made. But actually, it might have been completely AI generated, and maybe that person never said that. Right? So AI is one of the trends that is growing so quickly. And that's why we talked about it last week in reference to ethics, but we will also talk about it this week related to technology. There are other trends too that we will talk about related to technology. So let's start off with hardware. The information technology that we use requires both hardware and software. What's the difference?
Hardware is the computer intensity, and the software is the program that you put in your side.
Okay, Karina's exactly right. Hardware is the device. It's the physical device, right, that has the chips in it and is able to process information. But the way it processes the information depends on the software, the code, the program, or the apps, right? And you need both. If you had a computer with no software on it, it wouldn't do anything. And if you had software but no computer to put it on, like let's say you had it on a CD, it doesn't do you any good on the CD. You have to load that software onto a computer in order to use it, right? So you need both the hardware and the software. So let's look first at some familiar hardware. I'm sure everybody knows what a tablet is, right? Like an iPad, for example. Everybody knows what a personal computer is. Like there's one under this desk over here Dell that I'm using. It is a Dell. I believe you're correct. HP. Oh, there is HP. There are also laptops or notebooks like many students have here today. Dell, HP, Acer. Those are some of the big brands out there. Toshiba. So those we're all pretty familiar with, right? I don't know if you're familiar with this term mini computer. Does anybody know what that is? Well, how about mainframe computer? No? Okay, these are computers that large organizations will use. A mainframe computer could be very large, like as big as a room. And the reason they're so big is so that they can accommodate hundreds or thousands of users all using that computer at the same time. So if you go to, let's say, PG&E, and you're working at PG&E and you're logging into a computer there, that computer is probably connected to their mainframe system. So all the employees are accessing that really big computer. Now, a mini computer sounds like it would be really small, and it is small in comparison to a mainframe, but it's still much more powerful than just a normal computer that you and I would probably use, okay? Mini computers can accommodate dozens or maybe hundreds of users. A mainframe could accommodate thousands. Okay. So then we get to this term servers. What does that mean in terms of computers? What's a computer server?
It's like the manager for the other computers.
Okay. Yeah, and so it's a computer that serves up information to other computers. And we interact with these all the time and we don't even necessarily realize it. If you go visit a website, let's say on your phone, let's think about what's happening. And you pull out your phone, you go to your browser, and you go to a certain website address. So this device, your phone, you're telling it, I want to go visit whatever, yahoo.com. And then you click submit or whatever. And what it does, this device is going to send a signal through the airwaves that will reach, well, in this case, if you're connected to the Wi-Fi, it goes to the local Wi-Fi router. Or if you're not, it would connect to the data tower. Like, looks like there might be some cell phone towers right out there that as I'm looking. So it sends the signal through the air to either the cell site or the Wi-Fi. And then when that signal is received there, it sends it through the phone lines to the internet, and from there to the computer server that hosts that website. And I don't know where Yahoo's server is, but wherever in the world it is, that signal gets routed to them. Yahoo's server gets that signal and says, oh, you want to see our website? Okay, this is what our website looks like. And it sends that information the opposite direction. It goes back through the internet, through the cell site, through the airwaves to your phone. And it all happens typically in less than a second, which is pretty amazing when you think about it, right? So the server could be a computer that serves up web pages. It could be a server that handles mail, like email, and serves up your email whenever you download your email. What else? Could be used for streaming video, all kinds of things. Okay, it's just a computer out there that is serving information back to your device. Right? Does that make sense? So that's what a server is. Then we've got supercomputers. Now, I've never seen one of these. They're very large, maybe the size of this room. A supercomputer is so fast, it can be used for very complicated calculations. Like, for example, calculating the trajectory of a hurricane, or the exact angle a rocket ship needs to go in order to land on the moon. These are very complex calculations that a normal computer wouldn't be able to handle. Even a mainframe computer wouldn't be able to handle. But a supercomputer can do these in astronomically complex calculations. So they tend to exist in like research universities. So if you are, say, a physicist at some university and you're doing some research, you might be able to sign up to use that supercomputer for an hour to run some calculations. However, they're not the fastest computers in the world. Do you know what are the fastest computers in the world now? Those are quantum computers. These exist. They've only been around, I don't know, about a decade, and they're not fully developed. They have not reached their capacity, but they operate on a completely different set of physics. For example, the way computers work is information is stored on a silicon chip, right? You've probably seen them, little black rectangles. And that little piece of silicon, which is a mineral, can store information. And the way it stores information is tiny, tiny little parts of that chip can be either negative or positive. So the computer can say, okay, I want this little piece to be negative, this one to be positive, this one to be positive, this one to be negative. It can program that chip that way. And that is the basis of all computer languages, is this positive and negative, 0 and 1. All the information, all the pictures, all the sounds, all the videos, everything we see on a computer has been turned into a series of zeros and ones, so it can be stored on a silicon chip, okay? What makes a quantum computer different, each of those little places on the silicon chip can be a 0 or a 1 or anything in between. And so there's almost an infinite amount of information that you can store in each of those little places. Instead of just 0 or 1, on or off, it could be anything in between. So it allows for much faster calculations. In fact, this is a quantum computer developed by IBM. It looks pretty funny, right? Kind of looks like a chandelier or something. And you probably wouldn't want that in your living room. But the reason it looks so funny is they have to cool it down to such a low temperature, almost to 0, so that the subatomic particles can operate on the quantum level. And I don't know if you studied quantum physics at all, but it's really different from normal physics. It's crazy. The stuff that happens in quantum physics is really weird. Subatomic particles are not restricted by time and space. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you've got a quantum computer on one side of the planet and another one on the other side of the planet, okay? And if you make a change on this quantum computer, it can instantly make the same change on the other quantum computer. Instantly. Without them being connected to the internet, without any connection between these two computers, somehow, outside of time and space, they're connected to each other. Isn't that wild? So it's a completely different type of physics than we're used to. So these incredibly fast computers, these quantum computers, can do calculations in minutes that would take other computers thousands of years to calculate. And that's exciting because with that much processing power, we can probably solve climate change. We could probably, know exactly where the hurricane's going to hit. We could probably hack into anybody's computer anywhere in the world. So that's why the quantum computers get into the wrong people's hands. Uh-oh. Nobody's safe. So the world is having to grapple with this emerging technology. How do we handle it? How do we make sure that it's not used for bad purposes, right? Do you have a comment?
How much for one of these?
You could just do a search and see. At one point last year, I was curious how much they cost. $300,000 was the price I saw at the time. I'm sure it depends on a lot of factors. But they're not going to be available to us, as the public anytime soon. However, there might be cases where you do a search or you're using artificial intelligence and it might be processing on a quantum computer and you wouldn't even know it. So these are examples of some of the hardware that's out there. Any questions, any comments? Let's look at software. In the business world, there are many, many different software programs. These are some of the most common types. For example, for word processing, we've got like MS, Microsoft Word, Google Docs, you might be familiar with, Pages if you're an Apple user. Then we've got spreadsheets for doing numerical calculations, things like Excel sheets and numbers, database management programs. Microsoft Access is one of those. It's not as popular as it used to be, I would say. It's a little hard to use, in my opinion, but it is a very effective database. Salesforce is really popular. A lot of companies are using Salesforce to manage their customer information and to help their Salesforce keep track of their customers. Has anyone here used Salesforce? Okay. It's a really good thing to have on your resume because it is so common these days. So if you ever have a chance to learn Salesforce, I would recommend that you take advantage of that. Then for graphics, there's Photoshop, would be a common program we use for editing graphics. For presentations, PowerPoint, which you're looking at right now, right? This is a PowerPoint presentation. For desktop publishing, if you wanted to publish a book, for example, you could use Publisher. Canva is great for publishing, and you can access it for free. At least many of the tools on Canva are free. How many people have used Canva before? Yeah, it's pretty popular. Very easy to use. You can even make videos on there. I've seen videos made in a very short period of time that were very impressive. Your team, Eric, you made a Canva video, didn't you?
Yeah.
At the Startup Factory, yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. There are different programs for communication like Outlook and Gmail. Zoom, we're all familiar with. There are suites of software programs like Microsoft Office, Google Suite. OpenOffice is kind of like Microsoft Office, but it's free. There are programs specifically designed for people to interact and work together. Teams is a popular one. Again, you could use Google Suite for that. Slack is really common in the tech industry. Anybody here used Slack before? A lot of companies use that to communicate with one another. And then QuickBooks is an example of some financial software. A lot of small companies use that for their accounting.
And then on the right, Oracle VM VirtualBox.
What's that?
Oh, on the right, it shows Oracle VM VirtualBox.
Oh, okay.
Software.
Yeah, there are so many different software programs out there.
Windows XP.
Yeah, well, that's kind of an old operating system now, but yeah, that's still out there. So the more software you're familiar with, the easier it's going to be in your career, and it all looks good to have on a resume. Okay, let's see. Well, I'm going to cover this one slide, and then we'll stop and watch a video. Who can tell me what CIO stands for? We know CEO is Chief Executive Officer. So what do you think CIO is?
Chief Information.
There you go. You got it. Chief Information Officer. That's right. So this would be the person in a corporation that is in charge of their information systems, which is primarily, again, computers and computer-related technology, right? You can manage information without computers, but they're so useful that a lot of the information that happens in the business world is with the use of technology. Then we have this set of initials, MIS. That stands for Management Information System. So now a system, as I said before, is something that takes inputs, turns them into outputs, right? Any computer system does that. It allows you to take information, process that information, and then have a report or an answer to your question, whatever the output is that you're seeking. So companies use these information systems to help them be more effective in managing the company. That's where the term management information system comes from. Now let's think about the data. If you visit a website, and let's say you create a profile, you go on a website like, I'll just say Temu, because that's a pretty popular website. It's a company that is based in China. And Temu's got some amazing prices, I'm not gonna lie. I've only made one purchase there. I bought a trumpet for $82, which is amazingly cheap. Now, it wasn't the best trumpet in the world, I'm gonna be honest. But the case that it came in itself would have cost $82 if I just bought the case. So it was a case and the trumpet, and then it would have been several $100s if I bought it anywhere else. How do they make it so cheap? Well, part of it is that when they ship their products, they're shipping them directly from China, and they send them together with other big shipments. So it saves them a lot on their shipping costs. But they're willing to also sell their products so cheap because they want our data. And again, this is a Chinese company. So just know if you buy something on Temu, nothing against China, but they are an emerging superpower and they have been spying on the US. So we need to be aware and thoughtful about what data we want to share with them. Same thing with TikTok, right? That's a Chinese or a Hong Kong-based company. So when you go to one of these websites and you create a profile, or actually, even if you don't create a profile, guess what? They kind of know who you are. By your internet address that you're connecting from, by your device, by your email, by your phone number, they can piece together who you are. Even if you don't give them all that information, companies often buy information from other sources. And they say, oh, the person with this phone number, oh, we bought information that tells us they live at this address, and this is their credit score, and this is what they like to buy, and this is who they hang out with. Please know all this. This is the age of information, and I would say it's the era of big data. Why do they need all that information? Why do you think? What do they do with that information?
You run like ads.
Yeah, they'll send certain ads to us. They'll use certain algorithms to make certain recommendations to us, give us certain search results, all these things to get us to buy more stuff, right? So that helps them make money. Not only that, they could take the data that they have on us and they could sell it to other companies. They make money like that too. So that's why data, information, is such a valuable asset today. Think about all these companies like Facebook. They were around for years before they even started showing ads. They were losing a ton of money because they weren't charging anybody anything. You could sign up on Facebook for free and they had no source of revenue until they started running ads. Why were they willing to take such a big financial loss? They wanted users. They wanted data. Okay, one last point and then we will watch a video. So imagine you work in a company. They've got a software program that the HR department uses. They've got another software program for accounting. They've got another one for marketing. And if you need to share information between these different programs, you might not be able to because they're different programs. So one job of the chief information officer is to make sure that everybody has access to the information that they need in the company. So what you might need to do is find ways to transfer information between these programs or invest in a big program that covers everything. They call that an enterprise resource planning system or an ERP system. That's basically like one huge database and software program for the entire company. Because otherwise you get stuck in situations where, you've got some information and this other department is asking for it, but you don't know how to get it to them because they're using a different program. Okay, any questions, comments, Dave?
During the pandemic, was making money.
So good question. Now, Zoom was not well known before the pandemic, right? Before that, like Skype was a popular way for people to do video calls. And then like on WhatsApp, you could do it. There was Google Hangouts that never quite took off. But then Zoom started to really grow. It was funded by a private equity firm. So there was a lot of money already to grow Zoom into a larger company. And the pandemic came along and was perfect for that. Because people who had not been comfortable with video calls and video conferences and things like that were stuck at home. And they kind of had to either get on the bandwagon or just sit there and do nothing, right? So a lot of people, students, old people, everybody had to think about this. Am I going to finally get over this technology hurdle and start interacting with people? And for some reason, Zoom became the preferred way to do that, right? The California community colleges had already chosen Zoom, so all the community colleges were using it. That was helpful, but I'm sure there were many other factors that helped Zoom just be in the right place at the right time and became the most popular of these programs. And you could sign up with your own Zoom account. You could host your own Zoom calls for free. I think there was a 40-minute limit initially. So that kind of encouraged people like me. I ended up, even though I had access to Zoom through Hartnell, I wanted to use it for personal purposes, and I didn't want that 40-minute limit, so I started to pay for it. So they got it, and I'm still paying for it. So, well, I don't know how profitable they were. I've never looked at that, but I'm sure overall they're doing fine, right? Giving things away has been a popular way to market on the internet. Video games you can play for free, social media sites you can visit for free, movies you can watch for free, right? But they're either showing you ads as a way for them to earn revenue, or they're selling your data. They're making money somehow, right? But it is an interesting question. It'd be interesting to look back and see at what point Zoom became profitable and how profitable they are today. Here's one thing we can do just real quickly. If we look at their stock price, give us an idea. Zoom stock. We look over time.
It's fairly down.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so like during the pandemic started in March 2020, right? So you can see how their stock price took off from, let's see, in March, so they were around $114, went up to, whoa, $560, right?
40%.
That would have been the time to sell. Because since then, it's just gone down and down for some reason. I don't really know why. But interesting. Oh, and they laid off 1,300 employees.
No.
Ouch.
Microsoft's down almost 3%.
Is it?
Ouch.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about networks. Somebody tell me, what is a network when it comes to information systems?
VPN client, OSP, direct server.
Yeah, those are all related, but what is a network itself? Why do we need networks?
That's because that way we communicate.
That's right. If you didn't have a network, your device would not be able to communicate with other devices, right? So when you access the Wi-Fi, when you use your data to access the cell site, when you're at home and you have internet service at home and you get on that internet service, all of those are networks that allow you to then send information and receive information. It allows you to go on the internet, which is a network, right? The internet is like a worldwide network of networks that allows us to access computers all over the world. So a network is just a way for devices to communicate. Let's walk through a scenario here, and we'll talk about a specific type of network, a virtual private network, sometimes referred to as a VPN. Okay, so imagine that you're on vacation, sitting on the beach somewhere, warm, not like our beaches here that are cold most of the year. So let's say you're in, let's just say Cancun. How about that? And your boss calls you, said, oh, I need you to send me that document that you told me about last week. And you're like, oh man, that document's on my computer back at the office. I don't have access to it. But then you realize, oh, I can use a virtual private network to access my computer and get that document. So this is how it would work. Sitting on the beach in Cancun, using your device, your cell phone or laptop, you connect to the local internet service provider. Maybe it's through Wi-Fi, if you have Wi-Fi access there on the beach. Maybe it's through the cell signal, but somehow you're able to access the internet. And part of the internet is what we call the World Wide Web, right? And the World Wide Web, that name was developed by a guy named Tim Berners-Lee. He developed this concept. He made it so that you could click on a link and it would just take you to another website. And he did that to make it easier for us to navigate around the internet, right? You can just click on stuff. You don't even have to type things in, right? You can just open up whatever homepage comes up on your browser and you can just start clicking on stuff. And that allows you to navigate all these different computer servers all around the world. So we do that through the World Wide Web, which is a public network. There's also some non-public information on the internet, but for the most part, most of us use the web. And through the web, you could reach out to your company's server. So there's probably a special login that you would, like a special address you would go to log into your company's server. And then you would have to authenticate. Maybe you put in like a username and password. Maybe you have to do Face ID or something. But somehow you prove to your computer, to your company's computer system, that you are you. And that you're allowed to access their system. So once the server lets you in, the server is also connected to the LAN. Somebody tell me what LAN stands for.
Local area network.
Perfect, Eric. Thank you. Local area network. That is the network that is set up at your company's office so that the computers could interact with one another in the office. So it's local. And the only reason you can access it is because you had access to the server that lets you in. And then you can log into your computer and get that document that you needed. So you're going through the web, which is a public network. But if you're using a VPN, it's like it's a private network because it encrypts your data. It turns all the information you send and all the information you receive into a secret code that only your device can interpret. The reason for that, let's say somebody was picking up your signal and was monitoring what was happening on your cell phone. And all of this data, they were also receiving. But their device would not be able to decode that secret code. They wouldn't know, unless they were running a quantum computer or had some really sophisticated hacking software, they wouldn't be able to read your data. They might copy it, but they wouldn't be able to read it. So that allows you to operate in private, even though you're going through a public network. Is there anyone here that uses a VPN ever? Anybody? common VPN user? Yeah? For like gaming or? Yeah.
Oh, when I was in middle school, we would download them on our iPads.
Okay.
Because the school had used that.
So you could get around the schools, right? Because what it does, it allows you to create this private network, and sometimes it allows you to do things you wouldn't otherwise do. Let me, now that, sometimes could be used in a bad way, but I'll give you an example of how I used a VPN once. My wife and I were in Europe for a while, and we couldn't log into our bank account back here. Our credit union blocked the country we were in, and they wouldn't allow anybody in that country to log in. And there was no way for me to get around it except with a VPN, because with a VPN, it can make it look like you're coming from a different country. So as soon as I started using a VPN, they were like, oh, come on in. So anyways, that's what a VPN is. It allows you to
Change the country too.
use a public network, but in a way that's private.
But we could change the country, like when I was in
Yeah,
Germany,
yeah.
I changed the country to US.
Yeah. You can choose what country you want it to look like it's coming from.
That's where I could use it for.
Exactly. All right. So anyways, that's hopefully an explanation of what networks are, right? They let us connect our devices. All right, let's cover this one page and then we will stop and do our video discussion. So way back in the day, okay, I used to work for an internet company. We provided access to the internet. We provided software for making websites, we hosted websites. We did a lot of cool stuff. And this was back between 1999 and 2002, when the internet was still pretty young. And I loved it. It was a lot of fun. It was a great company until it ran out of money. And that was a different story. But back in the day, if you wanted an app, well, we didn't call them apps, we called them programs. If you wanted to put a new program on your computer, you had to buy the software on either a CD, compact disc, or a floppy disk. And then you'd have to load that onto your computer, and then you would have the app. And that became kind of a hassle because more and more software started to come out. So imagine you are running an IT department for a company, and you've got all these different computers in the company, and you want to add one piece of software to all of these computers. Or maybe you just want to update the software to the newest version. You have to order the disk, go around to every computer, load it up manually. It took forever. And then if next month the company had another update, you'd have to do it again. So eventually this other model came out where the company that made the software would run the software on their own servers and then allow you to access it over the internet. So you no longer had to buy the disk and install the software on every computer. The computers would just download the software. Now we do that all the time now, right? But when that first started, that was a big thing. And the term was ASP, Application Service Provider. So that was the first time you were able to download an app over the internet and just run it on your machine. And then if the app needed to be updated, it was automatic. It just automatically updated on your computer. Okay, so we're now very used to that. In fact, not only do we download software all the time, we stream videos, we stream music, we save our data back up onto the internet, right? So now a lot of things happen where we're not really storing the information on our device. Instead, we're downloading and uploading. Okay, any questions, any comments? Good, let's do our video discussion. So get in your groups of hopefully 4, try to have at least 4 in the group, okay? And come up with your group question. Oh, 7 minutes, okay. All right, so as I was mentioning, today, we get a lot of programs, apps from the cloud. What is the cloud? What does that mean? Cloud. It's really just computer servers,
Yeah.
right? They're not really in the clouds, right? They're in some data center somewhere that is just a big warehouse full of servers, all running, climate controlled because they get pretty hot, so you have to keep the building pretty cool. They're designed to keep hackers out. Sometimes the hackers still get through, but for the most part, a lot of the websites and other servers that we're accessing, we're downloading the data over the internet, and that's what we call the cloud. So not only are we downloading data and apps, we're also uploading data. And so we store our own data oftentimes on the cloud. If you use Google Docs, for example, you ever notice you don't have to save that file in your computer? It's stored on Google's server. So anything you type, guess what? Google's got it. It's a little scary because Google knows too much about us already, right? You know, like everything that you do affiliated with Google, they've got that data. So anyways, that's what the cloud is. It's just servers out there that we access on the internet. So it's kind of like it's up there in the clouds, but not literally. Obviously, we need these networks to share data. Can you imagine if you got hired at a company and they said, oh, we don't have a network. Just here's your computer, but it doesn't connect to anything. Well, that doesn't do you a lot of good. How do you send emails, right? How do you do a video call? You can't if you don't have a network. Now, some companies find that managing their information technology is very complicated. You have to try to keep the hackers out. Obviously, Hardnell was hacked, right? A year and a half ago when the ransomware attack happened. Even the Pentagon, even large banks and other places you would think were pretty safe, guess what? They've been hacked. So if an organization realizes how vulnerable they are, not only to hacks, employees stealing information from the computers, the computer crashing and just breaking, or getting damaged by water or fire. There are all these things that can go wrong, right? So to manage it properly, you need to have backup systems, you need to have antivirus systems, you need to have somebody who knows what they're doing. Sometimes companies decide, you know what, this is too complicated, we're going to outsource it. We're going to use an MSP, a managed service provider. And this is a company that takes care of that for you. They might even provide the hardware, and they'll protect the hardware. They'll keep it in some big data farm somewhere, or server farm. So it might be worth it. For some companies, you pay the extra money, let them handle that, and they'll probably do a better job than your own company could do internally. All right, so that's what an MSP is, managed service provider. All right, what we see here, we've talked about how there are different levels within an organization, right? For example, we've got the executives, those are the highest level managers. You've got some senior managers, middle managers, frontline managers, and even the workers, right? You have all these levels in the organization. Well, guess what? They need different types of programs because they're doing different work. So the workers, they are making sales, making products, providing services, and they need software that will help them do that. As you get into management, well, then you need to do other things. What are some types of information that a manager might need to do their job. You're a manager, what do you need to know? Your sales, your costs,
And salary.
your employee salaries, your salary. Which of your employees showed up and which ones didn't, right? You need all that information so you can effectively manage. If you're a more senior level manager, you might be making decisions like, what do we think our sales are going to be next year? How much are we going to need to produce? So you might need different software to help you make those decisions. And if you're an executive, you might be thinking, hey, should we buy another company? Should we merge with another company? Should we take our company public instead of being owned by private investors? These are the sorts of things that executives might have to decide. So there are different software programs that are needed at these different levels. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
That's it? No. Did I say we would only do those 2 slides? Is that what I said?
Yeah, we were only gonna do just.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll stick to my word then. We'll stop there. Okay. You get out a couple minutes early. See you all Thursday.
Just a few minutes early.
So it's right outside that. So everything.
Everything is over.